o'clock, so we'll get going, and I'll call the EDA regular meeting, April 19th, 2021 to order. And I will take a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Do I have a second? All right. All in favor?
Councilman Mundell.
Oh, thank you,
Aye.
Jack. Yes, will you take roll?
Yes. Brian
Aye.
Bezanson,
Aye.
Dan Butler,
Aye.
Julie Lux,
Aye.
Steve Voss,
Aye.
Tom Schuttenberg.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right. Next item, I'll take a motion to approve the March 15th, 2021 EDA minutes.
So I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Jack, will you take roll?
Brian Bezanson,
Aye.
Brian Mundell,
Aye.
Dan Butler,
Aye.
Julie Lux,
Aye.
Steve Voss, Tom Schutzenberg.
Aye.
That motion passes.
All right, we'll move on to item number 4, the Viking Boulevard Service Road update.
Thank you, Julie. The contract for the 186th Avenue Viking Boulevard Service Road project was awarded to Forest Lake Contracting Incorporated on April 14th, 2021. A total of 5 bids were received. Base bids range from $5,944,166 to $7,468,300. The engineer's estimate for the base bid was $5,200,000. 2 alternative bids were also received for the project. Alternate 1 would include a placing of a soil reinforcement mat in lieu of removing and replacing the contaminated soils in the 187th lane area. This alternate will be only selected if the MPCA will not reimburse the city for the contaminated soil disposal, which is $112,233. Alternate number 2, which is $84,638, includes the municipal sewer and water, additional 559 feet, the southwest corner of the Star of the North Academy. The city also has the option to extend the municipal sewer and water an additional 400 feet to Viking Boulevard at unit prices provided in the bid. Extending the sewer and water to Viking Boulevard would add approximately $65,000 to the project cost. The bid cost exceeded the project estimate due to increases in the price of unsuitable soils excavation and the importation of fill material. The unit prices for these 2 items, which are a significant part of the bid, were more than double the cost of the service road projects that were completed on the west side of Trunk Highway 65. In addition, the pipe prices were approximately 5% higher than projected. This increase was related to the supply and demand for materials, which is the current problem throughout the construction industry. Council accepted the base bid and alternate bid number 2 in the amount of $6,028,804. Further, council accepted the option of extending municipal water and sewer service an additional 400 feet to Viking Boulevard to facilitate service to the property north of Viking Boulevard in the future, and accepted alternate 1 in the amount of $11,364, only in the event that the MPCA will not reimburse the city for the cost of the contaminated soils. Work done in advance of the bid award was the relocation of the green on hole number 5 at Viking Meadows Golf Course, demolition of the Get You Moved and Farrell Gas buildings at 187th Avenue and Highway 65, and tree clearing of 7 acres on the service road right-of-way to meet the time deadline allowed for the disturbance of the long-tailed brown bat habitat. The work at the golf course has been paid by the MnDOT grant, and the 2 other activities were paid from our street capital fund and will be reimbursed from our MnDOT MSA fund account advance. We anticipate construction to commence on May 1st, 2021, with substantial completion by December 1st, 2021. Final completion is anticipated by May 30th, 2022. The total available funds for this project are $6,904,747. Of this, $750,000 is an anticipated advancement from our MSA fund account. This amount would not be directly used for the project itself, but to continue our MSA street projects and not interrupt their schedule of activity. In anticipation of this project, we had scheduled no MSA project for 2024, 2025. So getting this advanced funding will still keep us on our timeline for our local project. One other source of funding that can be used for this and is plugged into it is funds from the American Rescue Plan. Those are the monies we'll receive as part of the new infrastructure stimulus that's going out. We're scheduled to receive half that amount by mid-May of this year and the second half by mid-May of next year. So we've penciled those funds in for use on this project. And by doing so, we can probably complete this project with the use of no city levy funds. So the ARP funds can be kind of moved around a little bit depending on direction from council. But if we put them in here, we won't have to use any city funds for this road project, which I think is a very good deal, is to leverage a project we thought we were going to have to do in 3 phases over 3 years, utilizing extensive city funds, to one now that we're going to be able to complete with not committing any of our levied funds. Are there any questions on the project to date? Or any questions you have on the project as it moves along or in the future?
I have a quick question. So as we're discussing contaminated soils, just in the area that the service road will be, assuming if we don't get a grant to remove those and the match is done, I'm guessing there's contaminated soils on the rest of the area that the developer will take care of that can be remediated and he can get funds for. But does it matter for us if we just have a roadway? Not knowing enough about contaminated soils and what the contaminant is, and Mayor Voss, maybe this is your area of expertise as well. I mean, just kind of curious about what that means and if it's okay to put a road over that.
The area of contamination is going to be primarily underneath the right of ways. So it'll be under the city-owned property. We don't think that contamination goes as far as where they will be developing the quick trip to the northeast. In terms of management of those soils, leaving them in place is done quite often,
Okay.
depending on the levels. Petroleum products will degrade over time, so they'll go away eventually. So we'll see what my guess is MTCA is not going to reimburse for removal of those soils. It's kind of their pattern over the years. But to keep them in place really isn't much of an issue, particularly since there's no water users in the area. So there's no receptors basically. So.
Okay, thank you.
We have made application to MPCA for that reimbursement, but again, as Steve says, possibility of receiving those is probably slim. The alternative then is to do, as we described, is to place the matting over those soils and essentially leave them in place.
Jack, at what point in the schedule do we need to know whether the state's going to reimburse for that?
We should know within 30 days whether they're going to reimburse for that. So
30 days. I guess my question is, at what point does it affect the construction schedule? So I've worked with them for 30 years. I'm not very optimistic that we'll get an answer in 30 days, but if we do, it'd be great. So.
Well, we submitted the application, I believe, about 2 weeks ago. So Craig is following up on that, making sure we can answer promptly. I'd say we have approximately 45 days from the beginning of construction. So we would be in that area doing any disturbance.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions from anyone?
I have just one small question. With the extension of the city sewer and water and on the attachment where it shows the potential developable property on the north side of Viking, by the school in that area, does that fit in with our comp plan as to developing that area?
It's within the corridor. I think there is some commercial zoning there on the first of those parcels. Some of the other, especially the parcel that's just east of Star of the North Academy, is owned by the golf course. And they have indicated that that may have some potential for some higher density residential development, like townhomes that borders a portion of the golf course. So that portion would fit in. There's a couple of the other lots just east of there where the insurance agency is that are still zoned residential that would have to be rezoned in order to accommodate commercial activities.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion or questions on the material? Well, hearing none, you don't need any sort of a motion. This is just for informational purposes, correct, Jack?
That's correct.
Okay.
So
Well,
one thing I'd like to say though is, keep an eye out because, we've seen things start to happen in bits and pieces, but here within the next 2 weeks, it'll be started in full effort and hopefully we'll be seeing activity there every day until this project's finished.
sounds good. Good to see some activity. All right. Well, if we're ready, we can move on to agenda item number 5, the Internet Service Plan RFP.
Thank you, Julie. A preliminary draft of a request for proposals to develop a plan for the improvement and extension of broadband internet service in the city of East Bethel is presented for your review as attachment 1. The broader components of this RFP would address assessment of the city's broadband internet infrastructure, needs and goals of the system, determining the role of the city in the execution of the plan, coordination of the service providers, identifying funding sources for improvements and extension, describing the scope of work, defining project deliverables, qualifications and references of the submitters, and costs for the service. The draft RFP is one that was in your last meeting. Provided some sections that I have some questions and I'm just looking for some input and comments from the EDA on those. We'll go over several of those in a moment. The final RFP may be altered significantly. This RFP was a sample. It was furnished by Bill Blandon of the Blanding Foundation that gave a presentation to us about a little over a year ago. He's been very helpful in this whole process of getting information. They cannot assist us in this area because they're only designated to work in the outstate or the non-metro areas. They were able to assist us previously because AC Red was able to gain access to their services for, I believe, 16 hours worth of work, and they applied it to us in our project. Going forward, the end product of engaging a professional firm for development of an internet service plan would be the identification of areas that could be potentially served, existing areas that require service upgrades, funding sources, cost participation, coordination with providers to partner their efforts and resources to implement the plan. Preparation of the plan would be an EDA eligible expense should the contract be awarded for the work. Other sources of money will be considered as funding for this project should this item be presented for approval and awarded by City Council. We got notice today that there's some new deed grants that will be addressing further implementation of broadband. We're going to have a conference call with the AC Red director early next week to discuss this.
Good.
So we're exploring several other sources. Broadband is now becoming a priority, not only at the local level, but also it's recognized at the state and national levels as a need for underserved communities. So there's hopefully going to be some other funding to implement some of these projects. Funding for future projects identified by a city broadband plan could come from grant sources is yet to be identified. Things that staff is still investigating. Increased EDA levies dedicated to this purpose. Increased HRA levies dedicated to this purpose, if eligible. Creation of a special city fund to address internet service projects and or other sources identified through the RFP report. 2021 EDA funds are available and appropriate for the preparation of a broadband plan for the city of East Bethel at an amount of $65,000. The cost of the plan is going to be dependent really on what we're looking for and what we require. So we want to try to get everything correct the first time in the RFP to get a good solid number and not have to go back and be adding things. Also, if you'll note in the attached draft RFP, includes considerations of incentivizing private sector investment, engaging in public-private partnerships, forming new cooperatives, or operating as a government entity. These options would require capital participation and in some cases, operational systems beyond those of current ISPs, both of which would involve the city in areas that have been absent of public involvement. The coordination of these activities by a government agency to this point has been rare, but it's starting to become kind of a norm in trying to get things implemented and moving forward. The things that I noted are things, again, that we've never done before and things that really need some consideration and discussion to identify those that we feel comfortable with. It's one, none, or all of them, and to make sure that these are noted for the RFP submitters. Again, I said in the attachment one, there's several highlighted sections. I'd like to go over those briefly with you, and I'm looking for questions and answers. So anything you have for us will be greatly appreciated. Mr. Butler has already provided some comment on section D that I think are very appropriate. So with that, I'll go on to the first highlighted section on page 1 of the RFP proposal. And it describes a vision that we have, and the vision is to improve our broadband service to extended areas that don't have it by different means and technologies available. And it says we recognize there are a variety of models that could be used to achieve our vision, and we're open to all of them, including, as I mentioned before, incentivizing private sector investment, engaging in public-private partnership, forming a new cooperative, or operating as a government utility. Again, this hasn't been the norm, and it's kind of new ground for most everybody that's trying to stimulate the broadband improvements and extensions in areas such as ours. So I'm also going to bring this discussion up to City Council too, but there's several of these things that we need to have a comfort level with so we can be sure to let the RFP submitters know where we stand on what our options are.
Well, with those, I think at least take a look at them and see what suggestions there are. You know, we're not committed to anything right now, but we can always say no if we don't like it. But if something potentially positive comes out of it, let's at least take a look.
Yeah. And again, the RFP does not, once we get the submittals, it doesn't require us to award a contract, but it does gives us real options on seeing what's available, what the costs are. So this is something we'll be probably having then is an ongoing discussion throughout this process.
I'm glad to hear. So you'll be meeting with Samantha Markman, the new AC Red director. So if I'm not mistaken, she's gone through a process like this. So it would be great to get her feedback on the RFP draft as well.
Well, I'll steal a little bit of Stephanie's thunder.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. It fits in perfectly with this discussion. Samantha will be at our May meeting. She'll be here to introduce herself and to comment on some things that we're doing. So it'll be interesting to have her here and get to meet her. And we'll find out what the county has to offer in terms of assistance for us going forward.
Good. Jack, I think that's perfect as you outlined the vision. I think there's precedent for cooperatives and other public-private investments with other community needs. History shows us that. I do have one question. Earlier in that paragraph, you say with the RFP broadband network that is ultimately scalable to 1 gigabyte at home. Might we kind of nuance that language a little bit as to include something like within the next 10 years or put a time frame to that? Because we don't know ultimately what we will be looking for in the future. I mean, I remember 20 years ago thinking that 28K was all we needed.
Yeah.
So right now we think 1 gigabyte, that's the ultimate, but it could be more than that. So maybe we put about like for the next, a timeline period, or just like at this point reaching that within a certain number of years, because needs could change.
Well, and that's a good point, Tom, and they have, because from what I've read is that the new standard was to try to get a 25 meg download and 3 meg upload, but that's considered almost inadequate now. And the new standard is kind of like 100 meg download and 20 meg upload. So, and those are going to be constantly changing, and I don't think they're going to decrease either. And, with especially the demands we have from service now, with people working at home, the internet being a big entertainment factor, with it being used for distance learning and so many other things. It's changing the whole shape of our society and the way we work. So, no, that's a good point, and we'll kind of make that just a little bit, have some flexibility to it.
Well, and I think we also need to keep in mind that 1 gigabyte is here already. I mean, we have 1 gigabyte at our house, and so I don't think we should sell ourselves short, on goals there. So because gigabytes available. So.
No, I don't either, and that's why we're having this discussion. Is so your input on this is going to be very good in kind of updating my somewhat limited knowledge of this. So this is just kind of a framework. We want to go over it and get everybody's input and make changes where required. One of the other things on page 2 of the proposed RFP, it indicates something regarding a market study. I'm trying to find out if that's really essentially necessary for us at this stage. And I'm just seeking if anybody's had any experience with this on trying to determine expansions and improvements, if anything like this has been done, or you've seen anything like it, or you think it's an essential requirement for this RFP.
Well, back when we had our task force through the U of M, do we have any data or information from, I know there were businesses interviewed, and this may be older information, but was connectivity the broadband task force? Do we have any notes or any information from back then?
I think what we have from that is that scatter chart. And from that scatter chart, there was a high indication that broadband service improvements or extension were a very important factor in a business's decision to either expand here or to create or fill a gap in their needs. So I think it was kind of general information at the time. I don't think it was specific as to what businesses needed what. We can go back and look and see if it specified any numbers, but again, as we just had in the previous little discussion, those numbers may be outdated by now too.
Yeah, oh, I'm sure they are.
I believe that, I remember specifically, that was mostly anecdotal responses talking about things. I remember specifically, I'm not gonna cite the specific business, but they ended up, some of the costs that they had, they ate it because they wanted to get here because they needed the ground. But yeah, that was a certainly consideration. You know, insofar, Jack, as the city being involved with that, I'm gonna have to comb my memory banks and maybe make a phone call to Daryl Westrom, the fellow that gave us a presentation, because I remember him talking about how when he was working for, I believe it was Arvig, and they were pulling cable in new fiber optic cable in communities, how some of those communities did go to a city-owned system, and I just can't recall any of the specifics. I'll give him a call and see if I can come up with some anecdotal examples of what he had. I mean, I remember, I thought he was talking specifically about a couple of different towns that they had done some work in. And to me, to a certain degree, outstate Minnesota and East Bethel have a lot in common insofar as the fact that you got a long ways to go to get a lot of users. You know, we are getting better, having people more condensed, but there is some similarities there.
No, you're very right, Brian. There's almost identical problems and issues, with the only difference being that the outstate communities are eligible for a lot more grant funding.
Right.
Yeah, but
Grants.
you did cite earlier how this is becoming a priority on the national state level also. So who knows what's going to happen? I mean, I've heard a lot of talk from Washington about improving broadband access throughout the entire country. And it seems kind of artificial to just draw a line up on 241st or thereabouts and say, okay, we're not going to do anything south of here for this, like for instance, a state, we're not going to go south of here with any grant money.
Yeah, that's true. It certainly doesn't recognize municipal boundaries, and the the pandemic has certainly underlined the need for access to this service and its importance in the way we do things, not only now, but how much more important it's going to be going forward in the future.
Jack, one of the things I did a little research on was the USDA RUS. That's a rural utility service under the United States Department of Agriculture. And I looked at and researched what was available there, and I didn't see anything that would apply to our current circumstances, and that's why I sent that rewording over to you for that item.
Yeah, and that's what we've seen so far, Dan, is there's still that division between rural areas and metro areas as far as financial. So we'll go back and take a look at AD voltages data really on that market study. That'll be one thing we can address though with the submitters to see what the value of it is, given what information we currently have, to see if that's sufficient for them to make their projections. Moving on to the third page under section B, it talks about technology options. And under the last bullet point there is ways to provide a protected ring fiber network, connect businesses, anchor institutions such as schools, libraries, hospitals, public safety, cities, institution of higher education, and community support organizations. We already have that partially with Zayo, and essentially what Zayo does, it connects all municipalities in Anoka County and the county, the library system, and it also was extended up to Cambridge to connect the community college up there. So
Hmm.
part of that's already in place. Uh, I'm not so sure that Zayo is too interested in expanding beyond that now, but maybe there's some incentives for them to do that and make some of these other connections in this protected fiber ring that they're describing and see if it's necessary. So I just wanted to point that out that, some of this stuff we already have, but we need to find out if we need to try to expand on it. The other thing too, and getting back to what we've discussed under options down at the bottom of the page, there's a service level choice. It says the city must choose. So what we need to try to do in this is try to at least give a preliminary identification of what our needs are in terms of download and upload speed and existing gigabyte service. So we'll try to get some more numbers on that so we can present something that'll at least be a base for starting any type of discussions. On page 4, there's a highlighted item under item A. It says with special emphasis on leveraging CAF $2. That's something we'll have to find out what's available for that. And some of this stuff in here may be, this could also be a little bit dated. As Brian said, and both Brian's and Dan, that there's going to become, I think, more and more funds available for this. So we'll try to update things that may be dated, and if they're not practical, we'll leave them out of this. There's also a discussion about creating new networks. One would be called an open access network for the city with finance and contract to build a network, invite other service providers to contract to deliver services over the network. This is starting to get a little bit beyond, I think, my knowledge. I would need some more information on some of this. And I think that's something that the consultants could give us too, as a better description on what these open access proprietary networks are and what some of their hybrid models are too. I guess my biggest question is, and as Brian said too, we can look at it and we can decide when we get more information, but it's something that we're kind of getting out of our lane in a few of these things, or our comfort level. So just be prepared for some stuff that you may not have anticipated, and we'll just have to evaluate it on a case by case basis. On page 5, I have a list of something discussing section C, partnership options. And it goes again, and this is kind of the coordination of looking at who we're going to try to put together in this, which I think is one of the more important parts of what we're looking for, because this is going to be a very collaborative effort between a lot of entities, and getting this plan in place and everything arranged is not going to be something that we do overnight. But I think if we can get all the entities involved that are going to be either providers or people that are looking for service, or those that can provide financial assistance in whatever means, it's kind of going to be the key to implementing a real plan to get service out to those areas where it's feasible, and come up with other options for maybe the more outlying areas. So that's essentially the questions that I had on this, and I was just looking for any additional input that you have on anything in here. If you don't have it now, if you want to get back to me as soon as you can, I'd greatly appreciate it, because we want to make sure we cover all the bases and everything we can think of initially before we send this out for proposals.
I
The
have-
one thing I was.
Oh, go ahead, Dan.
What were we looking at in terms of timing to get this request out and have it back to us?
I would like to think that we can get it out get it to council and send it out around the 1st of June at the latest.
And 45 days later, have something back.
Yeah, that's it. We'll probably get, once it's sent out, we'll probably give them at least 30 days to respond, to develop something to submit to us. So we're looking in probably 1st to middle of July.
Thanks, Jack.
Jack, with I don't know if it's addressed in here or not, but in some of the sections where the city could be involved, I think any liabilities should be, if there's any liabilities that could harm the city potentially, that those should be brought up. So what's the upside? What's the downside?
We'll include that in our request, Brian.
So Jack, I have a question. In the schedule, you are, or in this proposed RFP, you're referring to a feasibility study project committee. So is it anticipated that there'll be a committee formed, maybe between EDA and city council and maybe some other groups to study these RFP responses, or what's the thought once these are received?
Council will have to make a decision on how that composition is going to be. You know, I personally feel, and I know that Steve and I have talked about this on numerous occasions, that this is a true EDA function. And I would suspect that there would be a number of members here that would be included on that evaluation committee. There may be some others that would be added to it also, but
Sure.
we want to keep it at a size where it's functional and not too big, but I think input from this group is essential.
I think possibly a good source would be planning commission also. There's one or two individuals that the city would like to invite to be on that, and because I know planning has a unique view of the city as well, as far as what the city goals are, what the future of the layouts of some things are, what the zoning issues are. They may be able to identify issues or areas that in the city that we may not think of. I just think that may be a good source to tap if we need more members.
Any other thoughts or comments?
If anybody wakes up in the middle of the night and thinks of anything, don't hesitate to contact us.
I just like to, what I would throw out there is that I'd emphasize the word proposal. It'll be interesting to see what people come back with. This is a request for proposal. It's not a plan and spec job.
Right.
Absolutely, and I'm hoping, you know, we have a list of about 20 potential firms that do this, and I would hope we'd get several and get some variety too. And maybe with that variety too, we could kind of pick and choose and do some combinations to see which one best suits our needs.
See who does their homework,
Right.
does the research.
So we've had several comments and questions, and I know you're looking for a motion on this. So how would we like to proceed with that?
I don't think we necessarily need a motion. I think I've got some direction
Okay.
here, so we haven't really thought, given any specific thing that would require an action by the EDA. And the next time we bring it before you, hopefully it'll be for your endorsement and approval and recommendation to city council.
That sounds great. Well, if there's no other comments or questions, we can move on to agenda item number 6, the business activity report.
Hey everyone, just a quick update on some of our newer projects going on. So the Village Apartment Phase 2, as you know, they are under construction right now. They are hoping to have it completely built out and ready for occupancy by this fall, so fall of 2021. And you may have noticed too that on the first apartment building, they were doing some updates to the architectural standards on that, so that's underway. I talked to Classic Construction today, and it looks like the site plan for Hannah Gold should be coming in within this week, so that's commercial business coming in. Viking Preserve, there's no more lots in this subdivision, so the city of East Bethel is pretty much built out on urban lots except what's left up in Whispering Aspen. So our lot inventory is very low, even on the rural residential side. So that's something we need to look forward to, is more urban and rural development. Aggressive Hydraulics, they did submit their TIF application, and that is under review right now at Ellers. So hopefully we'll hear soon on that project. And then lastly, the Elevage project. So the preliminary plat, the final plat, and then the master PUD plan was all approved by the city council on April 12th. So we're moving forward with that as well.
Thanks, Stephanie.
We also had a discussion with the developer on Friday too, and it sounds like the next phase, the residential phase, will be turned in very shortly as well. We're talking like within the next few weeks.
Okay. And would that be within our municipal water and sewer?
It is, yeah, yep.
Okay.
So it's that whole Elevage project on 185th and Highway 65.
Oh,
area.
sure. Okay. Any questions or comments from anyone on the business activity report? Hearing none, we'll move on to the item number 7, city council report.
Jack and Stephanie pretty much covered it all. I mean, our focus for the past month has been on the Elevage project, the cooperative agreement with MnDOT, awarding the contracts. And as Stephanie mentioned, we met with the developers last week to talk about their next phase, what's going on next. And we're actually planning to have a joint city council and planning meeting on May 3rd, the first Monday in May, whereas the Elevage developer will be here and present to council and planning their concept plan for the next phase. So it's so they're moving quite along, and I think they had planned 5 phases. I'm not sure whether it's going to be like 2 or 2.5 by the rate they're going right now. So so that was a very good productive meeting. A couple other things to note. Last EDA meeting, I talked about how the city council failed to approve a final plat for Whispering Aspen. There's a small addition in Whispering Aspen. Following the receipt of lawsuit, council reconsidered their vote and rescinded that vote actually, and re-voted on a final plat, which then passed on a 3-to-1 vote. So we got past that matter and got the final plat approved. I will add, however, though, with regards to elevage, there was actually 3 votes this last meeting. The preliminary plat and final plat for lot 1, which will be the quick trip spot. But initially, we also acted on the PUD master plan for that area. It's a planning tool. It's hard to describe the PUDs, but basically it's a plan for that whole area. And the master plan passed, but on a 3-2 vote. So still a little mystery with council right now on what's going on, but that did pass. That project is going forward. We did talk to the developers about it, and they are comfortable with what's going on. So that is all I have to add. Now, Brian, if you have anything additional I missed.
Just a little bit. Council did talk about going back to in-person meetings. It was brought up, if council goes back to in-person meetings, does the rest of the commissions have to go back as well to in-person meetings, or can they hold their own separate virtual meetings? How would that be done? So I know staff has contacted planning, parks, and EDA. It sounds like we have some results back, and we'll be talking about those in the future. I assume probably within next, I don't know, maybe Jack at the next work meeting.
We can certainly add that to the work meeting.
Yeah, if it's just to talk about those results, but so that's where it stands at going back to in-person meetings. We're talking about it.
If that's all from the council reports, I've got one update. I had an email discussion with Julie Lux this morning, and Julie is obtaining her master gardener certificate.
I'm an intern. Not yet.
As part of this, she has to perform 50 hours of volunteer labor. And Julie is actually applying to the University of Minnesota, after we discussed this morning, for some money to improve the appearance of the entrance sign of the city at 181st Avenue.
It needs it.
And even if those funds aren't approved, I will bring up to council that we recommend purchase planning so that we can do some things in the planner there, which we haven't done in a number of years. The Ham Lake Garden Club used to keep that up, but they ceased that activity, I believe, in 2008. So currently what we do now is keep the little trees pruned, mowed, and essentially just keep the weeds pulled out of the planter. So her offer is, I think, very generous, and I think it'll be a great benefit to the city. Thank you, Julie.
Oh, you bet. Yeah, I know. They had different things to sign up for to fulfill your hours. And there was a Blaine Memorial Garden. And I thought, why? And I noticed you could apply for your own, apply to create your own projects where you bring other volunteers in. So that we do the planting and the maintaining throughout the year. And I thought, why not do it in my own community? So I'll apply and I'll let you know what happens.
Awesome.
All right, well, if that is it, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Jack, will you take roll?
Brian Bezanson. You're on mute, but I took that to be an aye. Brian Mundell.
Aye.
Catherine.
Aye.
Dan.
Aye.
Julie.
Aye.
Steve.
Aye.
Tom.
Aye.
The motion passes.
Go watch some hockey, Dan.
Yeah, Julie, we've got 10 minutes to face off, so good time.
11.
Well, they actually dropped the puck at 7 after 8, so we, not that I'm keeping track.
No,
Right.
Right.
Double header tomorrow, Steve, I hope.
Good Good night, everybody.
Take care. See ya.
Good night.
Bye.